The Australian national cricket team represents the country of Australia in international cricket. It is the joint oldest team in Test cricket history, having played in the first ever Test match in 1877. The team also plays one-day international cricket and Twenty20 International, participating in both the first ODI, against England in the 1970 Euro 71 season and the first Twenty20 International, against New Zealand in the 2004 Euro 05 season, winning both games. The team draws its players from teams playing in the Australian domestic competitions the Sheffield Shield, the Australian Domestic Limited Overs Cricket Tournament and the Big Bash League. The national team has played 785 Test matches, winning 369, losing 208, drawing 205 and tying 2. Australia is ranked the number 1 team overall in Test cricket in terms of overall wins, win-loss ratio and wins percentage. As of December 12, 2015, Australia is ranked 3rd in the ICC Test Championship on 109 rating points, only behind South Africa and India. Australia has played 862 ODI matches, winning 533, losing 289, tying 9 and with 31 ending in no result. They have led the ICC ODI Championship since its inception for all but a period of 48 days in 2007. Australia have made a record 7 World Cup final appearances and have won the World Cup a record 5 times in total. 1987, 1999, 2003, 2007 and 2015. Australia is the first team to appear in 4 consecutive World Cup finals, surpassing the old record of 3 consecutive World Cup appearances by West Indies and the first team to win 3 consecutive World Cups. It is also the second team to win a World Cup on home soil, after India. The team was undefeated in 34 consecutive World Cup matches until March 19 at the 2011 Cricket World Cup where Pakistan beat them by 4 wickets. Australia have also won the ICC Champions Trophy twice in 2006 and in 2009 making them the first and the only team to become back-to-back winners in the Champions Trophy tournaments. The team has also played 78 Twenty20 Internationals, winning 40, losing 35, tying 2 and with 1 ending in no result making the final of the 2010 ICC World Twenty20, which they eventually lost to England. As of December 12, 2015, the Australian cricket team is ranked 3rd in Tests, 1st in ODIs and 3rd in T20s by the ICC. History = Early history = The Australian cricket team participated in the first Test match at the MCG in 1877, defeating an English team by 45 runs, with Charles Bannerman making the first Test century, a score of 165 retired hurt. Test cricket, which only occurred between Australia and England at the time, was limited by the long distance between the two countries, which would take several months by sea. Despite Australia's much smaller population, the team was very competitive in early games, producing stars such as Jack Blackham, Billy Murdoch, Fred the Demon Spofforth, George Bonner, Percy McDonnell, George Giffen and Charles the Terror Turner. Most cricketers at the time were either from New South Wales or Victoria, with the notable exception of George Giffen, the star South Australian all-rounder. A highlight of Australia's early history was the 1882 Test match against England at the Oval. In this match Fred Spofforth took 7/44 in the game's 4th innings to save the match by preventing England from making their 85-run target. After this match the Sporting Times, a major newspaper in London at the time, printed a mock obituary in which the death of English cricket was proclaimed and the announcement made that the body was cremated and the ashes taken to Australia. This was the start of the famous Ashes series in which Australia and England play a Test match series to decide the holder of the Ashes. To this day, the contest is one of the fiercest rivalries in sport. Golden Age The so-called Golden Age of Australian Test cricket occurred around the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, with the team under the captaincy of Joe Darling, Monty Noble and Clem Hill winning 8 of 10 tours. It participated in between the 1897 Euro 98 English Tour of Australia and the 1910 Euro 11 South African Tour of Australia. Outstanding batsmen such as Joe Darling, Clem Hill, Reggie Duff, Sid Gregory, Warren Bardsley and Victor Trumper, brilliant all-rounders including Monty Noble, George Giffen, Harry Trott and Warwick Armstrong, and excellent bowlers including Ernie Jones, Hugh Trumbull, Tibby Cotter, Bill Howell, Jack Saunders and Bill Whitty, all helped Australia to become the dominant cricketing nation for most of this period. Victor Trumper became one of Australia's first sporting heroes, and was widely considered Australia's greatest batsman before Bradman and one of the most popular players. He played a record number of tests at 49 and scored 3163 runs at a high for the time average of 39.04. His early death in 1915 at the age of 37 from kidney disease caused national mourning. The Wisden Cricketer's Almanac, in its obituary for him, called him Australia's greatest batsman. Of all the great Australian batsmen, Victor Trumper was by general consent the best and most brilliant. The years leading up to the start of World War I were marred by conflict between the players, led by Clem Hill, Victor Trumper and Frank Laver, the Australian Board of Control for International Cricket. Led by Peter McAllister, who was attempting to gain more control of tours from the players. This led to 6 leading players walking out on the 1912 triangular tournament in England, with Australia fielding what was generally considered a second-rate side. This was the last series before the war, and no more cricket was played by Australia for 8 years, with Tibby Cotter being killed in Palestine during the war. Cricket between the wars. Test cricket resumed in the 1920-21 season in Australia with a touring English team, captained by Johnny Douglas, losing all 5 tests to Australia, captained by the big ship Warwick Armstrong. Several players from before the war, including Warwick Armstrong, Charlie McCartney, Charles Kellway, Warren Bardsley and the wicket-keeper Sammy Carter, were instrumental in the team's success, as well as new players Herbie Collins, Jack Ryder, Bert Oldfield, the spinner Arthur Maley and the so-called twin destroyers Jack Gregory and Ted MacDonald. The team continued its success on the 1921 Tour of England, winning 3 out of the 5 tests in Warwick Armstrong's last series. The side was, on the whole, inconsistent in the latter half of the 1920s, losing its first home Ashes series since the 1911 Euro 12 season in 1928 Euro 29. The Bradman Era. The 1930 Tour of England heralded a new age of success for the Australian team. The team, led by Bill Woodfull the great unbowlable featured legends of the game including Bill Pinsford, Stan McCabe, Clary Grimmett and the young pair of Archie Jackson and Don Bradman. Bradman was the outstanding batsman of the series, scoring a record 974 runs, including 1 century, 2 double centuries and 1 triple century, a massive score of 334 at Leeds, which including 309 runs in a day. Jackson died of tuberculosis at the age of 24 3 years later, after playing 8 tests. The team was widely considered unstoppable, winning 9 of its next 10 tests. The 1932 Euro 33 England Tour of Australia is considered one of the most infamous episodes of cricket, due to the England team's use of bodyline, where Captain Douglas Jardine instructed his bowlers Bill Voce and Harold Larwood to bowl fast, short-pitch deliveries aimed at the bodies of the Australian batsmen. The tactic, although effective, was widely considered by Australian crowds as vicious and unsporting. Injuries to Bill Woodfull, who was struck over the heart, and Bert Oldfield, who received a fractured skull, exacerbated the situation, almost causing a full-scale riot from the 50,000 fans at the Adelaide Oval for the 3rd Test. The conflict almost escalated into a diplomatic incident between the two countries, as leading Australian political figures, including the Governor of South Australia, Alexander Hore Ruthven, protested to their English counterparts. The series ended in a 4-1 win for England, but the bodyline tactics used were banned the year after. The Australian team managed to overcome the damaging series, winning their next Tour of England in 1934. The team was led by Bill Woodfull on his final tour, and was notably dominated by Pinsford and Bradman, who twice put on partnerships of over 380 runs, with Bradman once again scoring a triple century at Leeds. The bowling was dominated by the spin pair of Bill O'Reilly and Clary Grimmett, who took 53 wickets between them, with O'Reilly twice taking 7-wicket hauls. Sir Donald Bradman is widely considered the greatest batsman of all time. He dominated the sport from 1930 until his retirement in 1948, setting new records for the highest score in a Test innings, the most number of runs, the most number of centuries, the most number of double centuries and the greatest Test and first-class batting averages. His record for the highest Test batting average, €99.94, has never been beaten. It is almost 40 runs above the next highest average. He would have finished with an average of over 100 runs per innings if he had not been dismissed for a duck in his last Test. He was knighted in 1949 for services to cricket. He is generally considered one of Australia's greatest sporting heroes. Test cricket was again interrupted by war, with the last Test series in 1938 made notable by Lone Hutton making a world record 364 for England, with Chuck Fleetwood Smith conceding 298 runs and England's world record total of 7 €903. Ross Gregory, a notable young batsman who played 2 Tests before the war, was killed in the war. Cricket after World War II. The team continued its success after the end of the Second World War, with the first Test being played in the 1945 Euro 46 season against New Zealand. Australia was by far the most successful team of the 1940s, being undefeated throughout the decade, winning 2 Ashes series against England and its first Test series against India. The team capitalised on its ageing stars Bradman, Sid Barnes, Bill Brown and Lindsay Hassett, while new talent, including Ian Johnson, Don Talon, Arthur Morris, Neil Harvey, Bill Johnston and the fast-bowling pair of Ray Lindwall and Keith Miller, who all made their debut in the latter half of the 1940s, and were to form the basis of the team for a good part of the next decade. The team that Don Bradman led to England in 1948 gained the moniker the Invincibles, after going through the tour without losing a single game. Of 31 first-class games played during the tour, they won 23 and drew 8. Including winning the 5-match Test series for a Euro-0, with 1 draw. The tour was particularly notable for the 4th Test of the series, in which Australia won by 7 wickets chasing a target of 404, setting a new record for the highest run chase in Test cricket, with Arthur Morris and Bradman both scoring centuries, as well as for the final Test in the series, Bradman's last, where he finished with a duck in his last innings after needing only 4 runs to secure a career average of 100. Australia was less successful in the 1950s, losing 3 consecutive Ashes series to England, including a horrendous 1956 tour of England, where the spin twins Laker and Locke destroyed Australia, taking 61 wickets between them, including Laker taking 19 wickets in the game at Leeds, a game dubbed Laker's match. However, the team rebounded to win 5 consecutive series in the latter half of the 1950s, first under the leadership of Ian Johnson, then Ian Craig and Richie Bernard. The series against the West Indies in the 1960 Euro 61 season was notable for the tied Test in the first game at the Gabba, which was the first in Test cricket. Australia ended up winning the series to a Euro 1 after a hard-fought series that was praised for its excellent standards and sense of fair play. Standout players in that series as well as through the early part of the 1960s were Richie Bernard, who took a then-record number of wickets as a leg spinner, and who also captained Australia in 28 Tests, including 24 without defeat. Alan Davidson, who became the first player to take 10 wickets and make 100 runs in the same game in the first Test, and was also a notable fast bowler. Bob Simpson, who also later captained Australia for 2 different periods of time. Colin Macdonald, the first-choice opening batsman for most of the 1950s and early 60s. Norm O'Neill, who made 181 in the tied Test. Neil Harvey, towards the end of his long career. And Wally Grout, an excellent wicket-keeper who died at the age of 41. 1970s and onward. The centenary Test was played in March 1977 at the MCG to celebrate 100 years since the first Test was played. Australia ended winning by 45 runs, an identical result to the first Test match. In May 1977, Kerry Packer announced he was organising a breakaway competition, a Euro World Series Cricket, a Euro, after the Australian Cricket Board refused to accept Channel 9's bid to gain exclusive television rights to Australia's Test matches in 1976. Packer secretly signed leading international cricketers to his competition, including 28 Australians. Almost all of the Australian Test team at the time were signed to WSC, a Euro, notable exceptions including Gary Cozier, Jeff DeMock, Kim Hughes and Craig Sargent, a Euro, and the Australian selectors were forced to pick what was generally considered a third-rate team from players in the Sheffield Shield. Former player Bob Simpson, who had retired 10 years previously after a conflict with the board, was recalled at the age of 41 to captain Australia against India. Jeff Thompson was named deputy in a team that included 7 debutants. Australia managed to win the Series 3, a Euro 2, mainly thanks to the batting of Simpson, who scored 539 runs, including 2 centuries, and the bowling of Wayne Clarke, who took 28 wickets. Australia lost the next series, a Euro, against the West Indies, which was fielding a full team, a Euro 3, a Euro 1, and also lost the 1978 a Euro 79 Ashes Series 5, a Euro 1, the team's worst Ashes result in Australia. Graham Yallop was named as captain for the Ashes, with Kim Hughes taking over for the 1979 a Euro 80 tour of India. Rodney Hogg still managed to take 41 wickets in his debut series, an Australian record. WSC players returned to the team for the 1979 a Euro 80 season after a settlement between the ACB and Kerry Packer. Greg Chappell was reinstated as captain. The underarm bowling incident of 1981 occurred when, in ODI against New Zealand, Greg Chappell instructed his brother Trevor to bowl an underarm delivery to New Zealand batsman Brian McKechnie, with New Zealand needing a 6 to tie off the last ball. The aftermath of the incident soured political relations between Australia and New Zealand, with several leading political and cricketing figures calling it unsportsmanlike, and not in the spirit of cricket. Australia continued its success up until the early 1980s, built around Bob Simpson, the Chappell brothers, Dennis Lillee, Jeff Thompson and Rod Marsh. The 1980s was a period of relative mediocrity after the turmoil caused by the rebel tours of South Africa and the subsequent retirement of several key players. The rebel tours were funded by the South African Cricket Board to compete against its national side, which had been banned a Euro along with many other sports, including Olympic athletics, a Euro, from competing internationally, due to the South African government's racist apartheid policies. Some of Australia's best players were poached: Graham Yallop, Carl Rackerman, Terry Alderman, Rodney Hogg, Kim Hughes, John Dyson, Greg Shipperd, Steve Rigson and Steve Smith amongst others. These players were handed 3-year suspensions by the Australian Cricket Board, which greatly weakened the player pool for the national sides, as most were either current representative players or on the verge of gaining honours. Under the captaincy of Alan Border and the new fielding standards put in place by new coach Bob Simpson, the team was restructured and gradually rebuilt their cricketing stocks. Some of the rebel players returned to the national side after serving their suspensions, including Trevor Hons, Carl Rackerman and Terry Alderman. During these lean years, it was the batsman Border, David Boone, Dean Jones, the young Steve Waugh and the bowling feats of Alderman, Bruce Reid, Craig McDermott, Merv Hughes and to a lesser extent, Geoff Lawson, who kept the Australian side afloat. With the emergence of players such as Ian Healy, Mark Taylor, Jeff Marsh, Mark Waugh, Greg Matthews, Damien Martin and Matthew Hayden in the late 1980s, Australia was on the way back from the doldrums. Winning the Ashes in 1989, the Australians got a roll on beating Pakistan, Sri Lanka and then followed it up with another Ashes win on home soil in 1991. The Australians went on to the West Indies and had their chances but ended up losing the series. However, they bounced back and beat the Indians in their next Test series. With the retirement of the champion but defensive, Alan Border, a new era of attacking cricket had begun under the leadership of firstly Mark Taylor and then Steve Waugh. The 1990s and early 21st century were arguably Australia's most successful period, unbeaten in all Ashes series played bar the famous 2005 series and achieving a hat-trick of World Cups. This success has been attributed to the restructuring of the team and system by Border, successive aggressive captains, and the effectiveness of several key players, most notably Glenn McGrath, Shane Warne, Justin Langer, Matthew Hayden, Steve Waugh, Adam Gilchrist, Michael Hussey and Ricky Ponting. Following the 2006-07 Ashes series which Australia won 5-0, Australia slipped in the rankings after the retirements of key players. In the 2013-14 Ashes series, Australia again defeated England 5-0, and climbed back to third on the ICC International Test rankings. In February and March 2014 Australia beat the number 1 team in the world, South Africa, to a Euro 1, and were re-ranked number 1 in the world. The Australian team was marred by the death of Philip Hughes on November 27, 2014. In 2015, Australia won the 2015 Cricket World Cup. As of December 2015, Australia is ranked third in Test cricket and first in ODI cricket. Team colours: for Test matches, the team wears cricket whites, with an optional sweater or sweater vest with a green and gold V-neck for use in cold weather. The sponsor's logo is displayed on the right side of the chest while the Cricket Australia coat of arms is displayed on the left. If the sweater is being worn, the coat of arms is displayed under the V-neck and the sponsor's logo is again displayed on the right side of the chest. The baggy green, the Australian cricket cap, is considered an essential part of the cricketing uniform and is a symbol of the national team, with new players being presented with one upon their selection in the team. The helmet also prominently displays the Australian cricketing coat of arms. At the end of 2011, ASICS was named the manufacturer of the whites and limited over uniforms from Adidas, with the ASICS logo being displayed on the shirt and pants. Players may choose any manufacturer for their other gear. In one-day international cricket and Twenty20 International cricket, the team wears uniforms usually coloured green and gold, the national colours of Australia. There has been a variety of different styles and layouts used in both forms of the limited overs game, with coloured clothing being introduced for World Series cricket in the late 1970s. The sponsors' logos are prominently displayed on the shirts and other gears. The current home ODI kit consists of green as the primary colour and gold as the secondary colour. The away kit is the opposite of the home kit with gold as the primary colour and green as the secondary colour. The home 2020's uniform consists of navy blue with the natural colours of Australia, green and gold strips. Players current squad for the 2015 Euro 16 season cricket, Australia's national selection panel have announced 19 players contracted to the national side from which selectors choose Test, One Day and 2020 international teams. Salaries are based on a player ranking system decided by the NSP as well as match fees, tour fees and prize money for on-field success. Uncontracted players remain eligible for selection and can be upgraded to a Cricket Australia contract if they gain regular selection. The players contracted for the 2015 Euro 16 season are shown in bold. Players in italics represent players selected in Australia's Test squad for the series against the West Indies. Key, SN shirt number. Coaching staff, head coach, Darren Lehman, assistant coach and batting coach, Michael Di Venuto, assistant coach and Test fast bowling coach, Craig McDermott, limited overs fast bowling coach, Alistair de Winter, spin bowling coach, John Davison, fielding coach, Greg Blewett, fielding consultant, Mike Young, strength and conditioning coach, Damien Midniece, team physiotherapist, Alex Cowan-Torres, team doctor, Peter Bruckner, team manager, Gavin Dovey, performance the analyst, Michael Marshall. Test match records. Team Australia have been involved in the only 2 tied tests played. The first occurred against the West Indies at Brisbane in December 1960. The second occurred against India at Madras in September 1986. Australia is the most successful Test team in cricketing history. It has won more than 350 Test matches at a rate of almost 47%. The next best performance is by South Africa at 37%. Australia's largest victory in a Test match came on February 24, 2002. Australia defeated South Africa by an innings and 360 runs in Johannesburg. Australia holds the record for most consecutive wins with 16. This has been achieved twice. From October 1999 to February 2001, and from December 2005 to January 2008. Australia shares the record for most consecutive series victories, winning 9 series from October 2005 to June 2008. This record is shared with England. Australia have won the ICC Test Championship 6 times since it started at Euro 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008. Australia's highest total in a Test match innings was recorded at Kingston, Jamaica against the West Indies in June 1955. Australia posted 758 eighths in their first innings with 5 players scoring a century. Australia's lowest total in a Test match innings was recorded at Birmingham against England in May 1902. Australia were bowled all out for 36. Australia are the only team to have lost a Test after enforcing the follow-on, having been the losing side in all 3 such matches, the first Test in the 1894 Euro 95 Ashes, the third Test of the 1981 Ashes, the second Test in the 2000 Euro 01 Border Gavaskar Trophy Series against India. Australia became the first team in Test history to declare in their first innings and then lose by an innings against India in March 2013. Indiana, 2013-14 Ashes Series. Australia had taken all 100 wickets on offer in the 5-0 sweep over England. Appearances equals, Ricky Ponting and Steve Waugh have played in the most Test matches for Australia, both playing in 168 matches. Batting equals. Charles Bannerman faced the first ball in Test cricket, scored the first runs in Test cricket and scored the first Test century and half-century. Charles Bannerman also scored 67.34% of the Australian first innings total in Match 1. This record remains to this day as the highest percentage of an innings total that has been scored by a single batsman. Ricky Ponting has scored the most runs for Australia in Test match cricket with 13,378 runs. Alan Border in second with 11,174 runs in 265 innings, while Steve Waugh has 10,927 in 260 innings. Ricky Ponting is the first ever Australian batsman in history to pass 12,000 and 13,000 Test runs. Matthew Hayden holds the record for the most runs in a single innings by an Australian with 380 in the first Test against Zimbabwe at Perth in October 2003. Donald Bradman holds the record for the highest average by an Australian cricketer with a remarkable average of 99.94. Bradman played 52 Tests and struck 29 centuries and 13 50s in them. Ricky Ponting holds the record for the most centuries by an Australian cricketer with 41. Former Australian captain Steve Waugh is in the second position with 32 centuries from 260 innings. Alan Border holds the record for the most 50s by an Australian cricketer with 63 in 265 innings. Adam Gilchrist holds the record of second fastest 100 and fastest 100 by an Australian. He also holds the record of most successful keeper and took as many catches for Australia and second only to South Africa's Boucher. Glenn McGrath holds the record for the most ducks by an Australian cricketer with 35 in 138 innings. Bowling equals. Billy Midwinter picked up the first 5-wicket haul in a Test innings in Match 1. Fred Spofforth performed Test cricket's first hat-trick by dismissing Vernon Royal, Francis McKinnon and Tom Emmett in successive balls. Fred Spofforth also took the first 10-wicket match haul in Test cricket. Shane Warne holds the record for the most wickets by an Australian cricketer with 708 wickets in 145 Test matches. Arthur Maylie holds the record for the best bowling figures in an innings by an Australian cricketer with 9/121 against England in February 1921. Bob Massey holds the record for the best bowling figures in a match by an Australian cricketer with 16/137 against England in June 1972. That was also his first match for Australia. J.J. Ferris holds the record for the best bowling average by an Australian bowler, taking 61 wickets at 12.70 in his career. Clary Grimmett holds the record for the most wickets in a Test series with 44 against South Africa in 1935 (36). Fielding and wicket-keeping equals, Jack Blackham performed the first stumping in Test cricket in Match 1. Ricky Ponting holds the record for the most catches in a career by an Australian fielder with 196 in 168 matches. Adam Gilchrist holds the record for the most dismissals in a career by an Australian wicket-keeper with 416 in 96 matches. One-day international records, list of Australia one-day international cricket records. Team equals, Australia's highest total in a one-day international innings is 434/4 scored off 50 overs against South Africa at Johannesburg on March 12, 2006. This was a world record before the South Africans surpassed this score in the same match. They held this record until July 4, 2006 when the score of 443/9 was posted by Sri Lanka against Netherlands at Amstelveen. Australia's lowest total in a one-day international innings is 70. This score has occurred twice. Once against New Zealand in 1986, as once against England in 1977. Australia's largest victory in a one-day international is 275 runs. This occurred against Afghanistan at the 2015 World Cup in Australia. Australia have won the ICC ODI Championship 12 times since it started at Euro 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2014, 2015. Australia are the only team in the history of the World Cup to win 3 consecutive tournaments dated back in 1999, 2003 and 2007. Australia were undefeated in the World Cup for a record 34 matches in the tournament. The last time Australia were defeated in a World Cup match was back in 1999 against Pakistan. This streak was broken again by Pakistan in the 2011 Cricket World Cup. Australia have won the most number of World Cups at Euro 5. Appearances equals, Ricky Ponting has played in the most one-day international matches for Australia, playing 362 matches. Batting equals. Ricky Ponting has the most one-day international runs by an Australian batsman with 13,291 runs. Ricky Ponting has the most one-day international centuries by an Australian batsman with 30 centuries. Ricky Ponting has the most one-day international 50s by an Australian batsman with 82 one-day international 50s. Ricky Ponting is the first Australian batsman to pass 10,000 one-day international runs. Shane Watson has the highest individual not-out score in an innings by an Australian batsman with 185. Shane Watson has hit the most sixes in a single innings by an Australian with 15 sixes. Bowling equals. Glenn McGrath has the most one-day international wickets by an Australian bowler with 380 wickets. Glenn McGrath has the best bowling figures by an Australian bowler 7/15. Brett Lee has the most 5-wicket hauls by an Australian bowler with 9 times. Fielding and wicket-keeping equals, Adam Gilchrist has most dismissals by an Australian wicket-keeper with 470. Adam Gilchrist has the most catches taken by an Australian wicket-keeper with 416 catches. Adam Gilchrist has the most stumpings made by an Australian wicket-keeper with 54 stumpings. Ricky Ponting has the most catches by a fielder 154 catches. Tournament history. A red box around the year indicates tournaments played within Australia. ICC World Cup ICC World 2020 ICC Champions Trophy Commonwealth Games Under the Southern Cross I Stand. The team song is Under the Southern Cross I Stand, which is sung by the players after every victory and treated with reverential consideration and respect within the team. The official lyrics are as follows, though when it is sung by the players, the word little in the last line is replaced by bloody, or an expletive. Under the Southern Cross I stand, a sprig of wattle in my hand, a native of my native land, Australia you little beauty. The authorship of this Under the Southern Cross I Stand is credited to former wicket-keeper Rod Marsh, who was apparently inspired by Henry Lawson's 1887 poem, Flag of the Southern Cross. Marsh initially had the role of leading the team and singing it, and on his retirement he passed it on to Alan Border. The other players to have taken on the role are David Boone, Ian Healy, Ricky Ponting, Justin Langer. The role was then passed on to Michael Hussey, who took it on when Langer retired in January 2007. At Hussey's retirement on January 6, 2013, he announced that he would be handing the duties over to Nathan Lyon. See also: Alan Border Medal, Australia A Cricket Team, Australia National Women's Cricket Team, Australian Cricket Hall of Fame, List of Australian national cricket captains, List of Australia ODI cricketers, List of Australia Test cricketers, List of Australia Test wicket-keepers, List of Australian Test matches. Notes. Further reading: Townsend, Stephen. Osmond, Gary. Phillips, Murray G. Wikipedia. Communities of Practice, the Production of Knowledge and Australian Sports History. International Journal of the History of Sport 30 No. 5 pages 545–559. How Wikipedia covers Australian cricket. External links: Cricket Australia, official Facebook page.